We will be starting in about 2 minutes. We still have participants registering. A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for attending today's webinar. This is on the current topic of sustainable retailing, the path to transformation. And this webinar is organized by the Ceylon Chamber Academy together with the Sri Lanka Retailers Association. Before we begin, let me kindly ask all participants to keep your microphones muted and your cameras switched off, unless you are a panelist. And if you do have any questions during the session, please use the chat option given to you so that we can pick up your questions during the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Now, let me warmly welcome all our speakers for this afternoon. Mr. Charita Subasingha, CEO of JK Marketing Private Limited. Ms. Lilanti Herath, CEO of Love Supermarkets Private Limited. Mr. Mahesh Vijayawardana, CEO of Singer Sri Lanka PLC. And Mr. Mohammed Rizvi, CEO of Softlogic Retail Private Limited. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for taking our request and coming to conduct this webinar for us. Thank you very much. And today's session will be moderated by Mr. Shiran Fernando, the Chief Economist of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. Thank you very much. Over to you, Shiran.
All right, thank you, Amanda. Hope everyone can hear me. So as Amanda mentioned, we have a very interesting topic, retail, which is a big part of Sri Lanka's economy, spurs a lot of economic activity, involves a lot of stakeholders, nonetheless, which is the public who consume a lot of the goods that come out of it, is a big component of GDP. Just looking at just the wholesale and retail component of GDP, that's close to about 11%. Employs a lot of people, and of course there's a lot of supply chain factors and actors in the process, and it's both a global and local phenomenon which touches into even logistics and the like. So it touches the length and breadth of what we're looking at in terms of the economy. And I think we have four great speakers to have a discussion on retail, more so on sustainable retail. How we're sort of going to have this discussion around is sustainable retail in the perspective of business continuity. I'm sure the panelists will talk about kind of the COVID impact and how business continuity has really been challenged, but moving forward, facing some of the newer challenges that are emerging, how these businesses are really preparing from. And sustainability in the perspective of being very responsible, not only to the environment, to your stakeholders, to your employees, and to your supply chain. So that's kind of the conversation we're planning to have in the next 85 to 90 minutes or so. How we will do it is we will initially have each of the four speakers. I don't need to introduce them again, but the four of them will be providing kind of their initial remarks, after which we'll get into a few structured questions for them based on the topic which has been given to them beforehand. But in the meanwhile, while these two segments are going on, please do put in your questions into the chat box. We'll be taking note of them, trying to understand them, and then put it forward to the panelists in the third round, which will be in the last 30 odd minutes of our discussion. So with that kind of context in play, let me now invite, so I mean, in terms of a panel, we do have two speakers coming from a supermarket retail chain perspective, and then two from the consumer durables. It's four CEOs, so I think you're really going to hear straight from the horse's mouth, as it were, really in implementing this strategy, and maybe take away a lot of operational and strategic things that you can really implement into your business. So I'm really excited to hear them speak. Always a pleasure to hear speakers from the retail side as well. And to kick things off, let me invite Charissa Subasinghe, who is the CEO of JK Marketing, better known as Kiwi.
Thank you very much, Shiran. I would like to first thank the Chamber and the Sri Lankan Retailers Association for having me as a panelist today. Interesting topic. Why I would say is that before I really go into today, let me also give you my perspective of what sustainability in a business is. I think in a nutshell, it is the sustainability comes from how relevant you are to your stakeholders. I think that is basically the nutshell here. And in any business would have different types of stakeholders, and depending on the type of business, the intensity or the focus on certain stakeholders will change. Now, unless we are relevant to those stakeholders, the business becomes unsustainable. It will go to break down. I'll take it from a retail point of view. Our customers and all that. Let's take it this way. The stakeholders are now better informed, and in one side, they know what is available, they know what is happening around, and they get influenced by this on one side. The other side of it is that the stakeholders have different aspirations as well, what they want to get as well. So with that comes that factor of is the business that I'm working with able to fulfill my aspirations? That is basically it, and that is where the relevance comes into play. So if you take the customer, for example, now I'll take it from a food retail point of view. We know that firstly is that they have traveled quite a bit. They know what is happening outside. They would have gone, even in the worst case, to South Asian countries, seeing how the retailers work there, and have a certain aspiration there set. They have also different tensions. When I say tensions, are certain fears, expectations, or whatever you call it as well. So that is basically the customer if you look at it. And as a retail business, if I cannot satisfy their expectations, that loyalty is going to diminish. And that is where I said as before, the relevance comes into play. Secondly, another big stakeholder becomes the employee. The millennials of this world are different from a few generations ago. There is nothing called lifelong loyalty, employment, whatever. They are wanting certain quick gratification. And in that case, are you as a business addressing that expectation, and are you relevant in that context? Or there's going to be high attrition, and it's going to be a different, and your business is not going to be sustainable. Simply a service business like retail, where you really rely on the employees. Another stakeholder could be the supplier. Now, if he too have certain expectations, or and if you think that I'm very big now, I can squeeze everyone and get everything from that person, and it is not a win-win type of a relationship you're having with that supplier, it is going to be very short-lived. You're holding him as a short hostage, and the next time that he sees a better opportunity, he's going to leave you, and therefore doesn't become sustainable. So I could go on, and I just want you all to start thinking of how it will work for different stakeholders. Then comes the community, environment, to all that aspects. And in my mind, when Shiran spoke of that sustainable business, the business continuity, it comes from consistently working, understanding the customer insights, the insights of the different stakeholders, and moving your business in that direction. I think it's a two-pronged attack on how you take that into a strategy, into your DNA of the business. Firstly, we need to have the right tools in place to gather the information from the different stakeholders, that we don't live in a capsule in isolation, but that information needs to flow. And secondly, most importantly, does the business structure the culture in place to understand and behave and have that agility to work and find solution for your stakeholders? So that is how I would look at how you institutionalize what you learn from those stakeholders. I think when the COVID came in, this became even a greater focus had to be placed in, simply because within a couple of weeks, a lot of change did happen. So did we go back to understand the issues of those, the main tension points of the stakeholders? Did we activate certain, or did we take certain strategies, actions, or whatever to handle those tensions that the different stakeholders have? And with that, what did we learn? Were we able to retain that customer? Were we able to grow that customer? Were we able to retain the employees? Were we able to retain the stakeholders with us? I think that is the open-ended question I would like to keep with you guys. Is that possibly we can handle it in the second round? Is that I think that is where what COVID did to the business continuity as well. Did we proactively take certain steps, understanding the concerns of the different stakeholders, come up with a plan to handle it? That is where it is. Another element in this continuity is that the role that is being played by data analytics as well as technology. How are you incorporating those tools in order, again, to be relevant to the consumer? They say that 2021 is the start of the fourth industrial revolution, which is going to be pushed by data analytics and technology. So in that context, these are two important tools that are also going to come in this entire game. So Shiran, that is where I would pause for the time being on where we are, on my take effectively on the business continuity and how different things are happening in the world today is impacting them as well.
Thanks, Sarita. I think a few things that we can really dive into in our next round as well. Mahesh, your thoughts?
Yes, I think since it's an open-ended question, could be quite common. So, firstly, good afternoon to everyone, and thanks for picking me as a panelist for this seminar. The question of on the sustainable retailing, how I see it as when it comes to any business, whether it's retailing or any other business, when the word sustainability is connected, that means it can be explained clearly in two parts. That is the long-term continuity of the business, and also the long-term continuity and the survival of the factors that are helping us to allowing us to have the business going on. So in general, we call them our stakeholder groups. So if I describe the sustainability sustainable retailing, that is maybe let's say with our foresight or by following the global trends, that the retailer continuously adapting to these changes and the needs of the people or the stakeholder groups, which are our consumers as well as could be our own people, environment, and the society. So these adaptations are needed on a sustainable business, and these needs can come in various forms in the ways of product offering, the service offering, even the retail ambience, the shopping experience that people expect, their preferences, and also technological adaptation, digitalization. So these are the needs that keep changing if you want to be sustainable. And at the same time, the equal responsibility and the importance need to be kept for the other factors that are helping us to do business, such as the environment, minimum harm or any damage, no full protection to environment as much as possible, energy efficient products that are to be put out, wastage management, other social responsibilities, even in packaging. I think even to the extent of going to a end producer responsibility, where it will be the future at some point. So these are some of the areas that sustainability comes in, and it doesn't just stop there. The people factor is very important when it comes to retailing. As Charith also mentioned, and in your opening remarks, you mentioned there's a huge economic contribution happen in the retail sector. So the people's well-being, the working conditions, their careers, their job security are also very important in driving sustainability. So when retailers like continuously pay attention to these important areas in the business and have the focus and the drive and keep evolving, it actually tells a clear story to all these stakeholder groups, including our customers, including the future, the new generation, the future customers of yours, that this business is doing something to be a long-term company, a retailer. So it gives you an elevation in your retail branding, a retail business. So this action will also, I would say, give you positive opinions and a positive perception about your company, and actually will have a competitive edge as a name as a sustainable retailer. Going a little bit on the year that we are passing, the COVID impact, I think everyone, including retail as well as any other businesses, we were tested to the maximum, being a new thing that we all faced. So again, we saw the companies or the retailers who are being agile and also fast to adapt were the companies that actually succeed, and they were showing their resilience to make a quick comeback. Now, if I just take an example of people factor. Now, you know, all of us are retailers here. We are working with large number of people who are distant from us, from the management. They are actually scattered all parts of the country. So with having large number of showrooms. So how do we keep them together? How do they bring closer to us? So that was one of our challenges. So we had to actually get them closer by way of constant communication, assurance to them, educating them on what needs to be done, and also ensuring the safety of them, not only safety of them as well as safety of the operation. So all these were done on a sustainable business model. So when the things are normal, they will all be ready to kind of go out and get the best out of their businesses. So as I said, the two parts combine, the business continuation part as well as supporting factors that are allowing us to do businesses are looked after well on a long-term basis. I would describe it as kind of sustainable retailing. That's my short description of it, Shiran.
All right, thanks, Mahesh. So interesting. I think you also touched an angle maybe we can get into in our discussion, which is the leadership aspect as well, and also touching on some of the stakeholders you mentioned as well. So we've heard so far from Mahesh and Charita. Next, we have Lilanti, who is the CEO of Last Supermarket. Lilanti, you've heard the two speakers before. Maybe your perspective, your take on it, and then maybe you can also touch a bit about the COVID aspect as well. You're on mute, Lilanti.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, good afternoon, Shiran, Amanda, and all the participants, and thank you very much for selecting me also as a panelist in this forum. I believe that sustainability has now become an important criterion in most of our businesses now, and you know, it was originally some time back confined to just CSR projects, and businesses didn't actually build their brand images around sustainability. Now it appears that social and environmental issues relating to forward and backward integration in the retail business and its supply chain play a pivotal role in building brand equity and in sustainability. So we also have seen there are customers, there are generations who are actually willing to pay a little more for sustainability because we consider being sustainable in the long term entails costs, incurring costs, and that there are challenges in a business trying to reduce its environmental impact. And and the retailer actually plays a very important role here, being the conduit of between the supplier and the consumer. But this process being sustainable in the long term with backward and forward integration, Sri Lankan companies, I believe, we have a long way to go. And when such efforts are planned, the strategic plan will actually uplift the economic, environmental, and social aspects for not just us, but for the future generation as well. And then I also think that sustainability requires a longer term focus, and it requires multiple stakeholder engagement and overhauling current some aged infrastructure, which needs integration right across the retail industry. And and it actually has to cover the core values of the staff, the organization, and the management of each company, and leadership should be provided to go forward. And then all sustainable endeavors will take a long time for its commitments and benefits to reap the benefits, and it may not be immediate, but in the long term it will enhance our financial performance, social and brand equity in the long term, whilst differentiating our each brand from others as sustainable organizations. And the upstream and the downstream consumers, channels of all these supply chain will require a lot of effort as a retailer, being the middleman who takes the supplier's products and then passing it over to the consumer. And as all the other panelists spoke about, human capital is the most important aspect here. And then when such endeavors are starts, we have to actually understand that sustainability in the business means a lot of efforts which require a lot of education, not just for the suppliers, but also for the companies as well as the consumers. And these retailers should be the point where customers and the suppliers are allowed to recycle, reuse, and repair. Reuse, recycle, and repair the products so that retailer can actually support the supplier as well by, giving prime shelf space and then looking at how we can fulfill such environmentally conducive, socially conducive goals. And then COVID, I think it actually shell-shocked the entire world. And this has been a macroeconomic issue, I think, the entire world faced. And then this gave us time for us to relook at the way we conduct business. And now we have seen a new general trade segment coming up, other than the retail and the modern trade. Those are the people who park their vehicles on the roadsides and then, selling their products. Most of them probably are without jobs, and they have now found ways of supporting their income. And I think in a way it's good. They are being entrepreneurial, they are being innovative, but at the same time, there are certain challenges we have faced in sustainability aspect when we see such businesses coming up, because the packaging industry, I think there is no regulated efforts in controlling their operations. So the packaging, how they package the stuff, and how it comes to the consumer, and how the consumer disposes such packaging will be a challenge. I think we are already facing challenges when you walk around in the country where, there are these food suppliers and, general trade based customers, how it spoils the environment as a whole. And then also, I'm also looking at now, although we say online businesses are good, online business is good. It actually eliminates contact. It gives us better visibility. We have the time from your own home, we order stuff. But then again, we have a huge challenge when we look at how these items, what we order, are packed. The bubble wraps to cellophane to bags to so many other things which are not environmentally friendly, and sustainability is challenged in every aspect here. So online, we should all strike a balance here in all these areas. Otherwise, this sustainability effort we are trying to inculcate as retailers might be a little compromised. And I also believe that the message about sustainability from the retailers should be a very clear, steady, and a convincing one. Reimaging our businesses for a long-term sustenance in terms of infrastructure investments, thinking, and generally accepted norms and behavioral changes will be challenging in the short term, but we still can achieve it. Thanks.
Thanks, Lilanti. I think really few points. If I was to just look at what you said, I think really the role of the retailers being the middleman and really having to play the role in educating the supply chain as well as even the customers. And the 3 R's, reuse, recycle, and repair, I think definitely things we should maybe deliberate on further. And the emergence not only of e-commerce trade, but also more trade on the ground, really maybe a threat to kind of what has been happening in terms of modern trade, but also something that's evolving with the consumer as well. So maybe something we can really get into in a while. So before we move to Rizvi, maybe I'll just remind the participants to also send in their questions through the chat box, and we will take them up in our third sort of session in today's discussion. Let me now invite Mohammad Rizvi, who is the CEO of SoftLogic Retail, to give his opening remarks. Rizvi, over to you.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Shiran, and also good afternoon to all the participants. And let me also take this opportunity to thank the Chamber and the Retail Association giving me to be a panel member for this event. So let me make a couple of statements before I deep dive into this, let's say the sustainability from the consumer electronic perspective. I want to run through a couple of examples there. So basically for us, what we think is sustainability is doing more with less, right? So, and also what we see sustainability is it's also a catalyst for innovation. So we have seen there are so many initiatives with sustainability coming as a core agenda of the organization in the strategy that also is driving innovation, right? Or product innovations, process innovations. So there are lots of innovations happens with this sustainability agenda, even it's a core strategy part of a business. Now let me run through a couple of stages when it comes to or the phases of a sustainability being implemented in the electronic industries as well. So starting from the design phase, right? So in the design phase, I mean, that's the design process to create products that's more streamlined, more sustainable, which need less packaging, right? And that contain fewer harmful chemicals, and of course increased, as Lilanti said, increased reusability and recycling, right? So that's from the design phase itself when you start planning that. So it's the first achievement of the sustainability, right? So for my industries, everyone knows mobile phones, right? So that's a great innovation, and also that's a very good example for sustainability. So if you look at the mobile phone, so it's kind of one product offering functionalities which is probably offered by around 8 products before, right? Whether it's a camera function, or whether you talk about the clock, or whether you talk about the music players, or even TV, even global positioning systems, right? It's all in one solution or one product. So with further consolidation, so basically we need less hardware, shipping on one product instead of separate 8 products. So that's again a very good example of sustainability, right? So in this case, everyone wins, right? So consumers can do more with less, right? And companies benefit through innovation and carbon footprint. So all this is again good example of sustainability if you plan it and it is part of your core strategy. So if you go to the second stage is the products that we develop, manufacture or develop contributes to the conservation of energy and electricity, right? So energy efficiency is a goal of all consumers and electronic companies, right? And the consumers. So if you look at brands like Panasonic, Samsung, and several other brands as well. So they introduce a lot of technologies. Like if you look at air conditioners, refrigerators today, or washing machines, we have this inverter technology, which saves energy of around 35 to 40%, depending on the different inverter technology that's being implemented in the market, right? So the third phase is in terms of the internal processes and the best practices in lean manufacturing and green facilities. So that's another phase of achieving the, let's say, especially in the electronic industry as well as sustainability. So as per a survey that was done for 11 major consumer electronic companies, they reduced electricity use per $1 million revenue by an aggregate average of 12.3%. So these are the companies who had the sustainability as a part of their core strategy, and the implementation of these measures, they're able to reach those sustainability goals and the targets. And the last phase is also in terms of the clean delivery strategies, right? So as Lanti also mentioned earlier, so you have to keep the supply chain efficient. So getting products from the raw material stage to the factories, then to the stores, it requires a collaboration. It needs teamwork. It needs right throughout end-to-end supply chain coordination there, looking at the short distance, right? So for example, one of the measures that we also have seen in terms of the on the supply chain. So as a policy, we somehow try to avoid getting the use sea freight over air freight, right? So we use, because air emits at least around 500 grams of CO2 per metric tons of freight per kilometer, while it is sea is only 10 to 4 grams, right? So these are such measures that from the sustainability, when it becomes as a core strategy, which you can achieve from different stages of if your entire value chain. So coming back to the COVID-19, yes, that's rocked the industry as we all faced, and especially the retail had a very tough task also here. And with the COVID-19 as well, I mean, interestingly, simultaneously, sustainability has also moved up the agenda of the retail players, right? If you look at the consumers, so they, in fact, today they want to buy products which is, let's say, carbon-free, CO2 emissions. They, in fact, so they are also asking whatever the environmental friendly products, right? So with the COVID-19 also created that awareness in terms of the sustainability, right? Of course, COVID-19 also created a lot of challenges in terms of shipment delays, product shortages. So that also led us also to look at in terms of alternative, the supply chain channel, supply chain resilience. So those aspects as well. And also with the COVID-19, one of the areas of one of the key stakeholders also employees. So as Mahesh also said, our employees all around the island scattered. So we need to, during these challenging times, we have to ensure their safety. We have to ensure that their income is protected. We have to support during this time, especially in the pandemic time, to some special bonuses and stuff, to keep those employees also in job, and especially the showroom managers. So we have to take their income protected as well. So on that, I mean, all that measures have been taken in terms of the initiative during the COVID-19. So of course, this COVID-19, and of course, not only COVID-19, so there will be certain other challenges also might be coming in future. So it's the time for readiness, ensuring the business continuity, and to do that in a sustainable manner. If you bring sustainability as a core strategy of your business, then I think we'll be faced for any challenges in the future. So we'll be better prepared for coming up in the future challenges. That's it.
Thanks. All right. Thanks, Rizvi. I think just to sum up what he said, I think doing more with less, really looking at the innovation aspect of it. And I think some of your insights as to how soft logic retail sort of was able to manage during the pandemic, I think was really insightful as well. Let's get into this discussion further with maybe some quick round of questions to all my panelists here as well. Let me start off with Mahesh. We can talk about sustainability, we can talk about retail and all the stakeholders, but it won't matter unless you have sales. And to have sales, you really need your consumers really coming to you, maybe coming to you several times. And it's quite different as a consumer durables company. There are a lot of factors that are in play. How do you all see it, especially maybe with the pandemic and kind of us emerging out of it? And how is it really driving the retail aspect of it going forward as well?
Yeah, okay. Shiran, now our industry, the consumer durable industry, if I ask the question of what is our purpose, what is the purpose of consumer durable, the simple answer I can give is we are in the business of elevating and enriching the lives of people. Or if I put it in another way, we want to improve the living standard of people. So people will always aspire to live better. People will want to upgrade. Say, for example, if they are cooking with firewood, they would like to have a gas cooker. I think Lilanti would like to hear that. Then a rice cooker. Then if you are using a feature phone, they will upgrade to a smartphone. If I'm washing my clothes with hand, I would like to see a washing machine in my home. If I was watching a 24-inch television, I would like to aspire to have a bigger screen TV. So likewise, it goes on. If I have a small direct cool refrigerator, I would like to see a no frost fridge. So that's the natural cycle of a person's aspiration. So with this COVID-19 coming in somewhere in last year, March, April, so everyone, including some of the experts, predicted that this consumer durable industry will go down significantly. They call it so-called these red zone sectors. So, but it did not happen that way. It did not happen that way because of few reasons. One is that these products, what we talk about, are no more luxuries. They are very essential part of your day-to-day living. They are necessities as of now. So they need those products. And at the same time, so that people want these products to as an ongoing daily lifestyle. Then we also saw a kind of a shift, a significant shift in the needs of the consumer due to the pandemic. That is, so the spending priority changed from certain products to certain products. For example, say people were thinking of buying furniture, would have delayed the buying furniture, but they wanted something else. So what we saw was that something interesting is the food and shelter, as you all know, becomes first, food and shelter. But we realize that the communication and connectivity has become now the next priority of people, because they were changed, the mode of living changed. So without communication and connectivity, now hardly we can live, basically. So that became a very high priority, maybe putting down a few others lower. So now say working from home, let's say we need to have the news and the information. Then children educating online, teachers now on tuition masters, lecturers teaching online. So all these changes required the new gadgets, the electronics, the devices, the smartphones, the laptops, the tabs. So all these equipment, so that shows a significant change in the people's need. And also when it again coming to the same sector, actually we stayed more at home than before. To be honestly, we had more family time, or with the family, more time spent. So whilst being there, you see more home improvements, more home needs, right? So people started preparing meals at home. Even not only the mother, the children, the father started trying out various things. So that requires a lot of kitchen items, home appliances. We saw a big demand for ovens, grinders, blenders, moving very fast, personal care products. So these are some of the very fast changes we saw during this period. So that did not actually slow down the momentum of sales, which actually brought the momentum of sales. So, and also another factor is the people got used to transacting digitally. Even some people, even I have not sometimes touched some of the banking apps before, but I was compelled to enter into some banking apps during the lockdown period. So it became a very simply a very convenient factor for me now. So like that, now the online purchases have gone up significantly compared to the prior COVID period. So these are some of the positive side of the consumer durable industry that we have seen against the predictions of people. some of them at early stages. So that is good side of it. So we also would like to discuss it further at a future, maybe in a little while for the questions when you come to that. So in the consumer durable industry, in all what we see is the needs have changed a little bit from the previous to now. The priority of the needs have changed. So it's a matter of sometimes the spending power. But the issue, the clear factor is these products are very much essentials for your day-to-day living. So that have been proven in a fact that even in a very difficult time, these products kept moving. So that is somewhat a brief overview of the sector, Shiran.
Thanks, Mahesh. If I was to get Rizvi, just quickly, do you agree with the views Mahesh is bringing about in terms of consumer durables has become almost as essential for the consumers heading in that direction?
Yes, certainly. I mean, as Mahesh also pointed out, we also see the same trend, especially we also see a growth, especially in the communication devices, IT devices like computers or the mobile smartphones, and so in terms of the distance learning, education, remote office this thing, and application solutions behind that. So we see a huge trend on that, and also we see it from the revenues also that has been generated, right? And also I think more and more, I mean, you get also two segments of the customers. One is more for value-driven customers, like so who wants primary their focus also with getting their money's worth on the selected brands based on the price and convenience. But more and more now also we see after this COVID-19 and also awareness of sustainability. So we also see another customer segment is a kind of purpose-driven consumers, right? So what they want is they're getting mainly want select brands, and based on how well they are aligned with their personal values and who are willing to kind of manufacturers or the vendors who can walk the talk. So there for those things, they're also looking at what is the energy savings of these products, right? Does it really give me, even if they're happy to pay even with premium, but still pay for that? I mean, if their energy saving features are there on a sustainable aspects of it, right? And this also gives another trend. I mean, in terms of being transparent in and also allowing the customers also a choice in terms of how your packaging is done. If you say, okay, we have a certain product and so it's an eco-friendly packaging, and maybe price-wise it might not look as beautiful as what a nice packaging, but as far as if it is eco-friendly packaging and we inform the customer, give the choice to the client. And I think this is where the as I said, the more of the purpose-driven consumers that comes into the especially relevant also in the during current market situations.
Thanks, Rizvi. So we heard from the consumer durable side from the consumer aspect of it and how it's become essential. Charita, Lilanti, from where you sit, where a lot of what you sell is essential, and FMCG is also booming, if I was to use that word. I think some of the data from Nielsen and other agencies really show how growth has really done much better, especially in the second half of 2020. Maybe touch about how the consumer aspect of it is taking place, is unraveling, and maybe the pace of it, something you can't really explain, or what's the view on it?
Well, Shiran, if I'm to add there, what Mahesh as well as Rizvi both said. Let me take it through explain to you what we understood from the consumer. What happened was after the initial lockdown happened is that we did a detailed consumer research, a quick dipstick to understand what the main sentiment, the main intention was, simply because I mean it is no secret that we all got hammered. I mean, when it went, and I'm sure if you were on social media, we all got hammered saying that we were not there for the consumer at that time. So we needed to have a quick action plan placed before it got into a deeper problem later on. So we went out understood from the consumer, employee, as well as the community, what their main issues were, the main concerns. And the consumer first was health and safety came as a big worry. What is going to happen to me and my family? So much unknowns are happening. Secondly, they were looking at, and some of them had lost some income streams. Either they had a pay cut, or sometimes most of them have lost their jobs as well. As Lilani said previously, that's the reason why you find some pretty good vehicles on the road, open bonnet, selling various stuff, is because they have lost their income. Third one they looked at was for convenience, because of the fact that they were having the fear of health and safety, as well as the work from home, the new stuff that came in. They were looking for convenience. So those were the three top priorities that came into were the three top priorities that we had to sort out as soon as possible. And as Mahesh and Rizvi both said, those are the implications that are seen as a benefit for the durable business, with people cooking from home rather than eating out because of the health and safety factor of it, work from home, and therefore the mobile phone business is improving. I can also tell you this, as Rizvi said, the mobile phone business is having a pretty good year, and so that is the behavior that you saw because of the sentiments changing overnight. So how, as a FMCG retailer, we also handled that was that we had to get our health and safety sorted out. We had to give the confidence to the consumer, look here, you come and shop with us, that we will ensure that we will take all possible precautions to have the shopping occasion safe for you. And hence the reason why we went and got our act together. Even before the different regulations came in, we wanted to ensure that we got it right. We also went to the next extent of going out and getting SLSI to certify that our health and safety protocol is right there. Simply because of that concern the consumer had about that. That is where I'm still linking back to my original statement of being relevant for the consumer and driving that consumer. Then we had to have the availability right, so that inconvenience is where the consumer has to shop in 2 or 3 locations, and thereby that is going to be inconvenient. Previously, possibly, we would have had a bit of leeway for them to come and shop with us for something, go to Leland for something else, and to go to Cargill for something else, to whatever. But we didn't want to do that. We wanted to have convenience for that. And also came the we got it ramped up so that the next lockdown, when it came in October, where previously we could not handle more than, let's say, 200, 300 orders for a day. The second lockdown, we were able to handle about 15,000 orders on a daily basis. So that is, I'm trying to put some perspective to what Mahesh and Rizvi is saying, as well as what has happened with the consumer is because of these factors. Now, you did mention that the FMCG businesses are doing well. I don't think it is doing too well, but we have been able to sustain. I would think that I think out of most of the other businesses in the world in the country today, I think food retailing, we are not badly off. I would say we are not badly off, and that is also coming from the factor of the consumer also consuming from home. That would mean he has to buy their ingredients. He has to buy from Mahesh and Rizvi the equipment to do the cooking, and that is what has happened. Of course, that is that relevance come into play as well. So it is important again is that the COVID did push us to some extent to take some very proactive steps. And e-commerce, for example, was something possibly always in the back burner, while the brick and mortar was possibly the place where we all invested a lot of money on. But the factor that now we got pushed to do that we brought that work that we possibly would have been in the back burner for a long time right into the front, simply because that was a need that had to be fulfilled immediately because of the COVID factor. I would also go on to even further say that COVID was a blessing for most of our businesses in Sri Lanka, simply because we were quite complacent. All our businesses were quite complacent. We were happy with what was happening. There was no real threat to our businesses. It was not a place where you could come overnight, somebody coming and flushing off and taking off business. No, we were complacent. But COVID also brought that shock that was needed for most of our business to relook at certain stuff and to prioritize some stuff. And I think it is important, it's still not yet over, that I think all our businesses, we really need to look at what we need to do now to maximize on this opportunity, whether it's the e-commerce part of it, looking at a different segmenting of the customer and going behind it, and to all that stuff. I think that is also the opportunity that is there that we should maximize as well. That is how I would look at the FMCG part of it. Possibly Lilanti will be able to add something onto that.
Thanks, Charita. Lilanti, your perspective, you heard from.
You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, I have muted the mic. Yes, just to add to what Charita said, the question you asked was about essentials, how the sale of essentials in the market moved. I suppose we cater to three segments of the consumers: the high spenders, medium income earners, and low income earners. All of them had only one requirement at that point during COVID, that was actually just buying essentials. Because none of, including the retailers, none of the consumers knew what was going on. So they were just trying to acquire whatever was available. And then, the sustainability effect in COVID comes when the suppliers also align themselves to just supply the products, especially the essentials, so that we can reach out to the consumer. I don't think that cycle was completed at that point. There were so many lapses, as Charita said, other than the health related issues and safety, all those put aside. I think we realize that we will not be sustainable if we don't really revisit the business model, and that sustainability comes not just with our customers. We had to actually integrate a lot of things with our suppliers, and if we don't do that, and if we honestly do not concentrate on our backward and forward integration, as I always say, we are not going to do well in the retail industry. So COVID and essential purchases were a part and parcel of the business continuity for us during COVID.
Right. Just a quick follow-up from Charita and Lilanti in terms of just to understand the consumer and the long-term trend. Are you still seeing the average kind of consumer coming a month decreasing to the store compared to, say, 12, 24 months ago? And is the e-commerce rate still at 15,000, as you mentioned, or is it only during these times when,
Is it part of your research for some paper, Shiran?
Not really, but just I think good to understand.
Yeah. Honestly, from what is happening with us, I'm not too sure whether it's the same. There is that we see that less frequency of customer. They consolidate their basket. Previously, if you had got somebody coming every other day for shopping or whatever, you find that person again is coming from the health and safety part of it, that you want to come and quickly do your shopping and go. So that comes it. And I think also we see while the number of customers are dropped as well as the frequency dropped, but the basket value has gone up simply because coming from whenever they come, they buy that, they consolidate their basket rather than previously it would have been a very rational who Cargill brochure, Apico brochure, and looked at to shop for ABCD things with Cargill skills and whatever, and and it would have been something like that. But today you find a customer, his bigger concern is the health and safety. So he'll go to one location, just buy his weekly shopping and come off in a hurry. So those are the elements that are coming to play in that front from as far as we are concerned. E-commerce is still there. It is much more than what it was. So if you look at it pre-COVID to now, of course the base is very low, Shiran. It's about 10%, 10 times the volume that we did before the COVID is there. So it has settled at a much higher level than previously. But of course, still I think our Sri Lankan consumer still prefers to walk into a store for touch and feel to whatever. So that's the reason why there's a lockdown or a bit of a panic. You find a huge peak, a spike in the number of online orders, while it comes down and settles at a higher level. So that is what has happened to the Keel's consumer.
Shiran, if I am to add, yes, what I endorse fully what Charita said. We have had higher basket values, less frequency means low footfall, but our basket value has increased tremendously as well. And also we have now created a new client segment as well. That's the Gen Z and millennials. Who never enjoyed shopping in store, and that segment has always been patronizing the retail industry in the form of online or e-commerce orders. Other than that, we have also realized that most of them require certain their basket value consists of a lot of essentials. So it actually conveys a message that we have to relook at our business and cater to their requirements. And that is something, apart from online and e-commerce business, yes, we see good improvement in those, but I believe that we have also created a new segment of clients in the rush.
Thanks, Iranti. I didn't get the number specifically from Charita, but I think we can all read into it to get at it. Let me now shift to, so we talked about the consumer, I think, in the last 15, 20 minutes. Let's move to the other side, which is the supply chain. Maybe if I can get Rizvi to talk about kind of the role of the supply chain in this kind of path to transformation, and in particular, maybe thoughts a bit on the compliance aspect as well.
Yeah, Shiran, yes. I think, as you said, let me focus on supply chain on the compliance aspect. I'm sure others also can add more onto the on the supply chain on general. So comes from a compliance perspective, I think firstly we need to earn the consumer confidence, right? Comes through transparency and traceability. So we need to have, especially now, a lot of technologies that are available today with QR code and stuff. So when you have the products, so with that moment you scan it, you should be able to see. So what are the source of the manufacturing? So what's in terms of the material that has been used? So these are things that consumers, they need that transparency. And then also from the manufacturers and the vendors on the supply chain, they also have to demonstrate their commitment to sustainability and also taking the environmental responsibility by offering details about their operations. Because that's what I think more and more the consumers are demanding for that. Remember, I said purpose-driven the consumers today, so they need such transparency on that. So from a governance perspective of the compliance, you need to make more transparent and also able to trace the information. And from the products perspective, again on the compliance aspect, so you need to kind of signature practices like eco-design. So basically it's called design for environment. So when you're designing a product, you should design for the environment. So in the US, if you look at the Environmental Protection Agency, they have published a certain evolving set of guidelines. So when they are setting up those products and designing the products, so which is helping the companies to achieve those design for environment, and implementation of these guidelines by the companies. So which kind of gives the assurance and gives the guidelines in terms of the to use the recyclable materials and then also reusable materials and stuff as well. So we look at good example is HP and Philips. So they began improving this design or incorporating the design for environment products and their solutions into their product design more than 15 years ago, and that they are now reaping those benefits, right? And so also, how can the consumers choose the product with good eco design? So there again, you should have certain tools, and here, if you look at the Green Electronics Council has created a rating system called EPIT, which is Electronic Product Environmental Assessment Tool. So which is evaluated on 51 environmental criteria, and in 8 categories like design for end of life, what kind of materials they use, and the packaging. So all those guidelines are given there. So the companies who's followed, there are around 11 electronic companies who's followed this EPIT certified have reduced the use of primary material by 75.5 million metric tons. So that is basically equivalent of weight of more than 585 million refrigerators, right? So basically, there are, of course, there are other guidelines like Energy Star certification, especially with our consumer electronic products has come in, also measure the energy efficiency. And in terms of the facilities, then we have this leadership in energy environmental design, which is LEED. When you're setting up the factory, which you need to, if you follow those guidelines, those buildings, it gives you around 25 to 30% of energy use per square feet. So in nutshell, in a supply chain, when you're planning that, and if you follow those guidelines and the governance, and I think that also reaches you to, allows you to kind of, meet your, let's say, the supply chain sustainability goals as well.
Thanks, Rizvi. Mahesh, just sticking to the supply chain as well, especially right now, given kind of the import regulations, and you never know with each gazette, is your item on a temporary suspended list? Is it on a credit period, or is it on an import control license? With that uncertainty, how do businesses really relook at its supply chain? How do you speak with your principals? How in that process, maybe that's an area which our audience would be liking to know.
Okay, Shiran, yes, I would say in a very few words that supply chain has become the most crucial part of retailing now. The name of the game at the moment is supply chain. So as you said, the import restrictions came in the early part of last year. That was unexpected. And what happened was the import restrictions were subsequently we lobbied, and as I explained earlier, we were able to convince the authorities that these are no more luxuries. These are essentials you need to live every day. So luckily for us, they understood our plea. They understood it. So what happened was the restrictions were taken off as credit-based granting. So we were able to talk to our suppliers and obtain credit for the 180 days period, 90 days period. Now again, if I just say something that will a supplier jump and give 180 days, 90 days credit? Overseas supplier? No. Those are given because these retailing companies are asking us sustainable retailing. They do. They are stable. They are stable. They do have good governance in their companies. So that made us actually, I'm sure most of the companies were able to obtain this 180 days, 90 days. So because of that, we were not so much impacted. So we were able to continue the supply to a great extent uninterrupted. That is one. But what we are now facing is a different problem of some of the global trends of shortages or the component level price increases, raw material, a very long production lead times. This could be a part of this COVID impact altogether. Our foreign suppliers asking for very long lead times. Then also the shipping space related issues. We don't have frequent shipping and the freight costs have exorbitant high. So there is a different concern altogether on the cost of products and the timely supply of products to the industry. So also one advantage certain companies have is having the local production. So it's a good thing that we also have the sustainability on the local production side. Some of the companies which we have invested well in advance, running sustainable production facilities that will, to some extent, negate the issue of import restrictions. So overall, I would say in a brief that whoever who has the best supply chain will certainly have an edge over the others in the marketplace. So that have become the most crucial in the current context, I would say, in consumer durable. I'm sure it's same with other retailing as well.
Right. And Maya, just a quick follow-up.
Yeah.
As a business, we're all able to mitigate it because you all have several suppliers in play, or was it having that really good conversation with your suppliers to keep them updated about these changing dynamics locally?
We actually were able to communicate, since we work with long-term basis, most of these suppliers, they understand a lot of situations and they were updated with the local context. And also the restrictions came due to currency on the foreign exchange side, so on the government regulation. So we were able to explain them, and with the assurance of our company's ability to repay all that. So there was no major issue in convincing them to grant credit. I'm sure most of the stable companies were able to obtain credit facilities. So that actually helped us to continuation of the business. And on an economic front, hit on the retail sector would have been quite, I would say, even for the countrywide GDP-wise, also drastic. Because as you very correctly said at the beginning, the retail sector is a significant contributor to the overall economy of the country in terms of employment and so many connected avenues of, like, for example, buildings we have, the transportation. There's a huge service sector, quite a big connectivity in terms of the economy. So that is why we can be somewhat happy that did not have a significant interruption in the supply chain, but not perfect, not to the optimum levels, I would say. We had some issues and we still continue to have certain issues.
Thanks, Mahesh. Lilanti, if I were to get you at this point in terms of still on the supply chain, you talked a little bit about educating even the supply chain and how the retailer is kind of the middleman as well. How has it been working with the supply chain in the last 12 months? And even in the foreseeable future, how do you really hope to work with them, in particular, given kind of your perspective on sustainable retail, which you elaborated on?
Well, sustainable retailing is actually just getting back to basics, getting our suppliers, identifying how this economy works and how the economics work in a retail industry. Suppliers, going back to the supplier, if we are to limit ourselves to the larger suppliers, I suppose, then we are not being sustainable. We need to get all the small timers as well, getting them to understand what sustainability is, and then getting suppliers also to the big boys in the supply industry to understand how sustainable their business is going to be in the hands of the consumer. And for us to just work as the conduit doesn't help us much if we don't have that cooperation from the suppliers. So looking at sort of addressing that issue, suppliers themselves need to get on board. They need to also spend on research and development to understand how the sustainability work, and then educating the supplier as well as even our own staff, just to say that we are sustainable. We are actually encouraging everyone to work sustainably and then walk the talk. All that will be required if we are to be a sustainable industry. And retail industry, as you know, the percentages in food and non-food is about 70-30 average, 60 to 40 or 70 to 30. So which shows that food contains the largest volume there. And then looking at how sustainable the supplies are in terms of food is a challenge, because we have some suppliers who are monopolizing in the industry, and then who actually don't really place much emphasis on the sustainability aspect of it. So it has always been a challenge, and I believe it'll be a longer term endeavor than just getting them to come on board in short term.
Thanks, Lakshmi. So we're towards the end, kind of the last 15 minutes of this discussion and conversation. And I'd like the participants really to maybe send in some of their questions, because so far we've just had a conversation amongst us. Hopefully everyone's tuned in and really listening and absorbing it, because I am certainly am. But maybe if I can get Charita while we wait for questions from the participants. Charita, you touched on tech and data analytics and kind of the role it was playing. Maybe if you can really provide kind of a company perspective or from an operational perspective, how you all are really leveraging it, whatever you can mention.
Yeah, actually, in terms of retail, if you talk any retail business, whether it's fashion, food, or electronics for that matter, we have so much data points in our business that is getting collected. And if you could remember a few retail, we had a session, I think year before last, where you could remember dunnhumby and BCG coming and explaining how the fact that there's so much data, that if we can use those data better, that we could create that stickiness with in terms of loyalty for your brand, as well as that is one aspect of it, where if you know what somebody buys, what the customer buys, at when he buys, in what and all that. And if you can also have your offering or promotions around that, for example, there's one small element, how loyalty can be brought in. That data point further expands into other areas of the business, in terms of the staffing, the data analytics on what will work for them, and also how do you do the rostering to whatever, to the extent where, as I mentioned before, now the world says that the fourth industrial revolution is starting with this, and data will be part of it, where they are going to look at productivity coming and data usage going to be. That is I believe, an area that as retailers we have been quite guilty of not using it, and that is something that is just lying there, and it is a matter of getting the right people and having a look at how it can be used. So we have started made some progress in that area, and I can assure you that the results that are coming out is quite phenomenal. That it can also become an interesting part of your armory in managing and how you link up back into your business continuities, the sustainable business model. That possibly is another element that should be part of a retailer's armory, and it is not something really NASA type, but it is realistically could be done. And it is a matter of getting the right people, having them to look at your data and coming up with some pragmatic plan that will help you. And through experience, I can tell you it's working. And that is something that I will also recommend to the retailers on this discussion to really pursue. And that will help you in your continuation as well. Shiran, I hope I did justice to your question.
Thanks. Anyone else who wants to add in terms of how maybe they are leveraging on data analytics and tech right now? Anyone wants to share some insight?
Shiran, I fully agree with Charita's point that this data, converting data into business opportunity is our next level of conversion. We are trying getting people advertising, we are trying with physical stores enhancing, but the real connectivity can happen through proper direct data usage. So I very correctly, as he said, that we are guilty of not using data to our maximum. And I don't think we are even used 10% of that properly to get the best out of it.
Maybe if I can also add, as Mahesh and Charita also said, and also with this data, it also creates new business opportunities as well. So especially in our industry, it creates different business models. Now, for example, if you look at in terms of the air conditions, what we offer, right, with the data analysis, and if you can go whether can we offer this as a cooling as a service, right? So that could be a business model that we can generate with data that we collected with the IoT and the network aspects. And can we also do a certain prediction when it comes to the service aspect? So there's lots of other insights that this data gives based on historical data, but also moving forward, especially in your forecasting and stuff. I think going by the historical data also going to be challenging. So you have to look for new data sources. You got to get the kind of new forecasting models that comes in. So I think this also has to be taken. So especially with the current volatile in the ways that the market is reacting, we also have to see what are the new ways of getting data for us to look for forward-thinking the strategies as well.
Thanks, Gabriel. I think we're down to kind of our last round of questions. We've looked at the consumer, talked about employees, we talked about the supply chain. Maybe if we each sort of maybe in the next 7-8 minutes just talk about kind of the outlook for retail and what that will really mean for developing kind of this path to transformation. So an outlook maybe in the next 12 to 24 months, how you all see things going, or maybe what are some of the opportunities and challenges that retailers would face and maybe how they can mitigate it. Mahesh, maybe if I start with you and then maybe the others can contribute in.
Yeah, sure. Yes, outlook for next 12 to 24 months, Shiran, we have positive, we see it positively. As I mentioned at the start, that people will continue to look for better living standards. Although there could be difficulties in spending power, but people will continue to acquire what they need. So therefore, we see that the consumer durable industry, the penetration levels of most of our products are not very high. Certain ones are at high level, but certain ones are at very low level. So there is a penetration requirement will happen, the replacement cycles. Then also the new penetrations as well as the replacements will happen, which we are seeing it happening. So the sector, as a sector, we think that it will continue to be a growth, and we are in the say middle income level, lower to middle income level. So there's a growth in home improvements, or I would say the family status levels. When the GDP per capita usually goes above 4,000 to 5,000 US dollars, we see more people acquiring consumer durables and getting into better living standards. So that is one thing that we would expect to happen. And just an interesting, if I take a minute, people will ask now, how do they find money to buy products at this stage with so much of problems in COVID? But what we see is there are like three segments of consumers or the people, I would say. Definitely, we can't deny the fact that there is an impacted segment. There is no question about it. There is an impacted segment who has lost their income, their spending power. But at the same time, we see a segment that has not so impacted. They are getting their usual salaries, income. They are working as before. Then also, to some extent, a little less partially impacted segment. But with these two segments, there is a substantial savings as well due to this current way of, we would say, the living. There are now, for example, if you are paying a housing loan interest earlier, now it is less. Your installment has come down. If you had, let's say, if you are purchasing a bike or a car, small car, a lease rental, which is not happening right now, maybe it is temporary, but that money is also saved. Now, if you also take your travel, your fuel expenses, sometimes your bus fares, the van hire fares have come down. Then less foreign travel, hardly anything, right? So you save some money. No weddings, parties, eating out, right? So all these have save you some money, definitely. So these are some of the things that are actually flowing into our sectors, which we believe that people would like to have them acquiring capital goods. Interest rates also have come down. So the acquisition of capital goods for their own consumption is also happening. So these are some of the things that we believe it is there right now. And in going forward, some of the challenges, even in the short to medium term is on the dollar. The volatility of the US dollar is also a question mark where we are going to end up. So we are unable to book forward any currency in the current regulation. So these are, and how policy on the import restrictions and the local production, how the consistently going to be, and also the revival of tourism, or that we are yet to see something which will be a long-term situation. Hopefully the vaccination will give some kind of freedom for people to move around, a better economic activity to start. So these are some of the challenges as well as opportunities we see, Shiran. Thanks.
Thanks, Mahesh. Vedanti, do you want to go next?
Yes.
And
yes.
then maybe Rizvi and Charita to close.
Yeah, for the next 12 months, I firmly believe that the food category is not going to decrease because people will anyway eat. But I suppose their style of choice will change with these import restrictions. Those who opted for imported products may look for locally manufactured products. That will change eventually. And even now, I think island-wide there are people who look for alternative products which are real good substitutes for the imported items we have. And we have also seen a very interesting trend of liquor component increasing. And well, more than food and non-food and the consumer durables, I suppose we have seen the trend of liquor consumption increasing. So I suppose people are now opting to different lifestyles, and that is going to stay on. And also, just to add on to the data analytics, I think artificial intelligence, information sharing, all that will play a very important role these days. And information sharing will also be very productive in the retail industry if we are to be very successful.
Thanks, Vedanti. Rizvi?
Yes, as Leanti and also Mahesh highlighted, I think most of the points that Mahesh highlighted is also completely true for us as well, and the same challenges that we also face. In addition to that, I also would like to talk a bit of a trend as well. So with this demand for remote working and online learning and stuff, so I think we'll see a lot of momentum in the digitalization moving on, right? So as it is also from the retail, from the smart home and smart products. So we'll see a trend which has already we see also from our results perspective and the revenues. I think this trend is going to continue, right? And also we also see due to the current challenges and stuff, there might be also certain business models we have to look at, right? So I'm moving from capex to an opex model, right? So the affordability is maybe an issue now. So maybe we can look at such models where customer does not need to own it, and then can we look at more like also from a sustainability perspective, a certain shared services aspects, a certain platform where they can share the resources on a certain extent, right? So that also could be another area. And we also see diversification and different industries coming together to offer certain additional services. Like, for example, in our case, probably telco and the retail partnering together, right? Offering smart solutions. Things like very good example is like, partnering with Dialogue and us together with getting these Alexa voice enabled TV aspects of it, such things where two industries coming together who can provide such solutions. And the last I also would like to address in terms of the COVID-19 also, I think our online business has really grown, and I think it's going to grow further. But also the omni-channel presence also going to be key, right? So customers should have the same experience, whether it comes online or physical, and which both sides that's will definitely benefit. I mean, end of the day, even though we have the online channel, customers, let's say the solution specification details, and they can do their research and still do the transaction either online or do the end sales from the showrooms as well. Right.
Thanks, Ricky. And Charita, for your final word. You're on mute.
I'm totally in agreement with Mahesh, what Mahesh said about the customer, what Lilanti said, as well as Rizvi said. And I think that is how we will also be looking at a very, very optimistic view. An area of worry possibly is the macro condition and how the foreign reserves will play out. The implication to us, possibly as retailers overall, is that securing our logistics, our availability of stocks, and the implication of that. That is something that I think as retailers will possibly need to think through and work through the implications. If the foreign reserves come down, from where are you going to get the stocks? How are you going to manage that? I think that is going to be the challenge to funnel the growth that Mahesh explained, the potential. I think that is the only thing that we should be looking at, and also working on different options now, working out various scenarios now, with certain assumptions of what could happen is, I would say, a prudent way of managing it, Shiran. That's the only word of caution I would have. Other than that, I think it should be a better year than last.
Thanks, Charita. So I think in economics, we sort of expect everyone to make a rational economic decision, but that doesn't really take place. And I think talking to four of you all, we just understood how the consumer really reacted in the last 12 to 18 months and how they're expecting to react. And in an environment of low interest rates, low inflation, and also low taxation, how businesses are really gearing up in the retail sector, be it consumer durables, be it even fashion, be it even the FMCG market. So very insightful conversation. I hope we can relay this conversation to more people, maybe post it on the SLRA website, send it across to your membership, to our membership as well, and get these insights out so that it helps all businesses to really plan for the next 12 to 24 months as they look to do sustainable retailing. So in short, I think what came out of this discussion is really sustainable retail is doing more with less, and it's also going back to business and really taking care of the key stakeholders in the organization. So With those words, let me thank once again Charita, Mahesh, Lilanti, and Rizvi for spending 1.5 hours, a bit more than that, of your time with us on this webinar for some of your insights, giving some maybe insights from a company level, which I'm sure the participants who are still tuned in would really have valued across as well. So with that, let me draw this webinar to a close and wish everyone a pleasant evening, and till next time on a similar webinar as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Wish you the same. Thank you.
Thank you.